After building the kitchen a year and a half ago, or 2.5 years ago, we moved in to our new kitchen, and I never built any organizing things for the drawers. So that's what I'm going to start working on now. So this first project is making a way to hold our flat things vertically so they don't just sit in the bottom of the lower drawer. So if I could make a system that would hold all of this vertically so you can just reach in and grab the thing that you need. So what I'd like to make is a bunch of vertical panels that will make some vertical slots that will hold these different flat things. So I'd like to make 2 end pieces that'll sort of be the structure for all of the vertical separators. Now, in these thicker structural pieces, I want to cut some thin slots, and these will fit 3mm plywood just about perfectly. And I can make sort of a file system in this drawer. And these slots need to mirror each other from end to end. And it fits the 3mm birch plywood perfectly. Now I can cut the divider pieces, and at this point I'm just making them into rectangles for each divider. I think the height was 8 inches, and then the length was 20, I think, which was a little shorter than the drawer, but big enough to hold all of our cookie sheets and cutting boards. I thought, for some reason, at this time, that it'd be nice to put handles in all of these, in that you could pull them out and move them around and make wider spaces and narrower spaces. And I had thought at first I would cut each sheet individually, but after thinking about it, this was going to take a while, and I would have to set up some kind of system to hold them in the same place for each cut. And as they're so thin, they're difficult to hold down on the table with my hold downs. So what I thought I would try and do is cut them all at once and cut the handle into the full stack of all the sheets. But in thinking about this, what I thought might happen is that as I cut out the handles, the center piece of each layer, as it got free from the cut, would come out and might damage the bit, or might damage the divider piece, or might get sent flying across the shop. I didn't want to just cut them all without holding those center pieces. So my thought was to hold the set of dividers from the corners and also nail the section that would be the center of the handle down, so that both the inside and the outside of the handle were held in place as they were being cut. So I found 2 points within the handle that I could fire a plastic nail through all of the layers, and that will hold all of those pieces in place so they won't come out when they're cut. Now I can remove all the pieces, and this almost worked perfectly, but I didn't quite go deep enough. So the very bottom layer I had to cut free. It was paper thin, so it was just a matter of cutting it. Then I can remove the center stack of the handle. And the very bottom piece needed a little more cleaning up. And the rest of the dividers I did all at once, stacked together. Then it was just a matter of putting finish on all of the parts. And I just used polyurethane. I used the structural end panels to hold up the dividers so that they would dry. And then realized I needed to put finish on those end pieces, so I made a quick holder for the dividers. I can install all of this into the drawer, so I can kind of see where everything's going to fall by putting everything in place. So I want to make this removable. So I want to attach the end pieces to the drawer with screws. I can figure out where those are going to fall within the drawer. And I can drill holes through the side of the drawer. then attach the structural ends with screws to the drawer. And I want the dividers to be snug, but not so tight that they won't slide into place. I also kind of figured out at this point that the handles really aren't that useful. They look kind of cool, but I don't really see us pulling the dividers out and changing their positions once the drawer is in place. We got a new cat, Cinnamon, who's into everything. So I can put the drawer back in again, and it seems to work. It seems to be a little bit tighter, but I think it's okay. And now we can keep everything organized. We've been using it like this for about a week now, and it's so much nicer. Now, the other two drawers that I want to organize are the top drawers on either side of the stove. And one of them is the silverware drawer, and one of them is the kitchen utensil drawer, I guess I would call it. It's spatulas and big spoons and sort of the things you'd use for cooking. So for those drawers, I just want to make some divided boxes so that we can put the different things in those drawers into their own little spaces. So what I'll do for these is miter the outer corners and make a frame. Then cut some dados into that inside face of that frame, and I'll put dividers that run between the sides of the frame. So first I could hold the frame together with corner clamps, which would also help in putting the miters together and keep everything square. But in doing that, I could then figure out the lengths for the divider pieces, as they were different from the mitered pieces on the edge. Now, in the silverware drawer, I was going to make a smaller box than the other drawer, as that drawer is smaller. But what I thought I would do is divide the longer sections with a piece running through the middle. And instead of making a bunch of little short sections, I would cut one long piece with some joints that would fit into the longer divider pieces. So this would divide the long length of those storage spaces. So once I had the divider section cut, I could then cut one slot out of the center of the longer pieces and cut that slot. Now for these, I clamped all of them to the fence at once. This made it go a lot quicker, and it made it much more accurate, as the slot was in the same place on each of the pieces. I also found in doing this, I needed to put a scrap piece at the back side to keep the grain from blowing out. And this is how the silverware drawer goes together. Now I'm going to make two of these for the silverware drawer and have them stack inside the drawer. So on the lower one, we'll keep the things that we don't use so much. And on the upper drawer, we can keep the silverware that we use every day. So it's a little bit like an organized junk drawer underneath our silverware drawer. So once I have the frame together, I can then glue in and nail all of the dividers. And I did the long pieces first. Then I did the short divider that divides the length. And I didn't glue the overlapping joints in the middle. I just glued the end. Now for the kitchen tool drawer, it was basically the same construction. I figured out at this point for doing the dados on the two sides at the same time, I could put a little scrap piece of wood in the first dado, and that would hold the two pieces together, so that the other dados were all mirrored match. And I can figure out the lengths for the dividers. And I spent some time on the first one getting it accurate. And once I had that set up on the table saw, I then cut the rest of them really quickly. And I could glue those in place. Now on these, I wanted to divide the length as well, but as we have a bigger range of lengths of kitchen tools, I wanted to make this vary a little bit more. So I cut a bunch of short pieces to move across the width of the drawer. And I was about to put them in, and then I thought maybe I should take the whole system upstairs and kind of lay out what we had and make sure that what I was making was going to work for what we had. And it was pretty close. I decided to move all of the short pieces up just a little bit. So the cubbies towards the front of the drawer are a little bit longer than the cubbies in the back. Now to do the bottoms of all of the boxes for these two drawers. And I started with the silverware drawers. And I can just lay out the size using the frame that I already have made. Now I'm going to make the bottoms a little bit big and just attach them straight to the bottom of the frame. Then flush trim the edge of the bottom. I also sanded the bottom of the frame so that the plywood bottom will sit perfectly flat against it. It was pretty close, but this made it perfect. Now I can mark on the bottom before I glue it where all the struts are. So when I go back and put nails in, I can put nails in the middle of the piece of plywood and hit the dividers. And this worked really well. I don't think I had a single nail come up through the bottom of the box. Then I can sand the box for the big drawer. And it's the same thing, marking out where the dividers are and then gluing and nailing everything in place. Now to flush trim the edge, I realized I didn't have a 1/2 inch flush trimming bit to go in my shaper. But what I figured out is I could use the CNC machine sort of like a pin router and just set it at the right height and run the box around a flush trimming bit in the CNC machine. Then I can sand the tops of these boxes on the drum sander. And this got all of my little marks off of the plywood. Then I can put finish on. And this took a little while getting into all of the cubbies. So this is the silverware / junk drawer. And it's not too bad getting the upper tray out. I'm thinking now this is where I should have put the handles and not down in the bottom drawer. It's super nice having a tray that fits exactly in the drawer. And this is the kitchen utensil drawer. That's always been a pain searching for stuff, but now it should be much easier to find things. Thanks for watching.